This episode is sponsored by Kerkering Barberio, your trusted partner in tax, audit, and outsourced accounting services. Serving Sarasota, Manatee, and the greater Tampa Bay area for over 50 years, KB helps clients achieve their personal and business goals. Visit kbgrp.com to learn more. I met Megan Rose 3 years ago when she was chosen as one of the winners in the Business Observer's 40 Under 40 issue. I asked her about her organization, and she told me that she has an elevator pitch at the ready to stand out in a crowd of nonprofits. I tell people, she said, that we are the Uber of connecting helpers to the hurting. To read more about leaders like Megan, subscribe to the Business Observer. Go to businessobserverfl.com. Hello and welcome to the Business Observer's From the Corner Office podcast. I'm Mark Gordon, managing editor of the Business Observer. Today's guest is Megan Rose, CEO of Better Together. Megan, thanks for being here. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Yeah, it's an honor for me because I think what you do is amazing and you have a great story, and we're going to talk about that and things you've learned about leadership as we get into it. Before we get into what Better Together is, I want our audience to know a little bit more about you with some very random questions, random rapid fire questions we have for you. We're going to start with, who is one person, dead or alive, you would love to have dinner with?
My biological dad. He passed away when I was 21, and I just miss him dearly.
Awesome. And so you had you had a relationship with him at some point in
Yeah.
your life?
Yep. Just gone too soon.
Yeah. On a little lighter note, what is the one food you would take with you if you were going to a deserted island?
Ooh, can I just take a whole cow so I can have steak? And I love steak, but I don't want just one.
I like your thinking because then you have variety. I like it.
Yeah.
Last question, what are the two most used apps on your phone?
That's a good question. It's probably my email app and my notes app.
Excellent. Good thing you didn't say TikTok too, otherwise there'd be no way you can use that anymore. Okay, so we're going to get into it. We're going to talk a little bit about Better Together, which I believe is about 8 years old. Tell us what the organization is, what your role is there, and kind of how it got started.
Yeah, so Better Together is all about mobilizing local communities, local churches, community partners, employers to be able to come alongside families that are going through a difficult time. They might be struggling with poverty, job loss, homelessness. Maybe it is a single mom who is isolated and doesn't have a strong support system and has nobody to step in and help care for her children. As parents, we all need a village and we need people who are in our corner to come alongside and support us. I'm a mom with 4 kids, 8, 7, 5, and 3. Life is busy, and I have this incredible support system that if I have a medical emergency, if I were to lose my job, if I were to go through a major hurricane and have damage to my home, there's people who could come alongside, care for my children, provide us friendship and support. But so many families in our community, they're isolated, they're dealing with these really difficult challenges, and they don't have a healthy support person that they can call. They don't have that village to support them and their children. And so that's what we're doing, is we're changing that.
Yeah.
We're making that nobody struggles alone, and we can connect the helpers and the community to those that are hurting. And we do that by caring for kids short term. Our volunteer families are not paid, but they're vetted, they're background checked, and they will welcome kids they've never met, into their home and care for them short term while their parents are working to get back on their feet. We do mentorship, and then we also do job coaching. So people who are looking for employment or a better job, they'll get connected to a volunteer job coach, and we have a network of employers that we work with across the state that we'll match them with. And we also host job fairs with local churches and volunteers. So
Yeah.
everything is just community-based, helping people help themselves, and giving them the right supports they need to be the best parents that they can be for their children.
Yeah, I love that. And you told me that before, I recall, about that sort of elevator pitch of the people who are hurt, connect the people who are hurting with the people who can help. What a great sort of very simple way to explain what you do. And just touch too again on the job fairs and on the second chance hiring. I know you and I have talked about that, which I was just so fascinated by all the work that goes into finding people coming out of prison or jail or just other difficult and dark circumstances in their life. I mean, what are some of the things that you guys do to help these people get back into society?
Yeah, so I think a lot of us, if we lost our job, we would have people that we could call to help us find our next opportunity. That's how a majority of Americans find their next opportunity is through networking, relationships, and connections that they have. If you have a criminal record or a gap in your employment, maybe you've been outside the workforce for a while and you have children who are not in daycare yet, and you just have barriers to finding employment. What we do is we really try to remove those barriers and help make a pathway for people to be able to connect with hiring managers that are really focused on their future, not their past. That we create a system that really humanizes the job seeking process, because if you do have some of those checked boxes on your resume, algorithms will really just not get you to the hiring manager.
Sure.
I know this personally. My dad spent time in prison, and when he got out of jail, he really struggled to find a path forward in a society that wasn't really willing to give him a second chance. And he needed that job to stay sober. He needed that job for us to be able to heal and move forward as a family. And someone was willing to take a chance on him and get him a job. And that job was just a game changer for my dad, and that kept him out of prison. And a lot
Yeah.
of people don't realize that if someone isn't able to get a job and they don't have a support system and they've spent time in jail or prison, recidivism is incredibly high. The likelihood of them ending back into prison or jail is much greater. And so, what we do is we help people through our job fairs and job coaching, where we have employers willing to hire on the spot. We have job coaches and volunteers that really rally around every job seeker that comes through the door. We build up their confidence. If they need haircuts, they'll get a haircut. If they have children, we have volunteers that will help entertain their kids while they connect with employers. We'll help them with their resume, build up their confidence, and then really match them to somebody who's looking for some really great talent.
Yeah.
Um, and second chance hiring, our employers, they are so pleased with the people that they get. And we have employers that didn't typically do second chance hiring and have, changed some policies and have been able to hire people. And what we do is we just continue to support that person even after they get the job, because we know that it's important to get a job, but in order to sustain that job and grow within that job, you need that support system.
Yeah.
If childcare falls through, you need someone to watch your kids. If your transportation's an issue, we'll help figure out transportation. And so, really, just building that community of support to help people be successful. And work is just so important.
Yeah.
It's important for society, it's important for people, and it gives dignity and so much purpose.
Yeah, for sure. And so you mentioned your dad, and I've heard you talk about that as well. Your sort of origin story. What happened, sort of growing up and in your life that led you to this career path?
Yeah, so I'm a Florida native and I grew up in Orlando. And my life was hard. My parents really struggled. And my dad had an accident at work, which led to him getting addicted to opiates. And he was unable to find another job, and that led to further abuse of drugs, and then also led to drinking, which led to my dad coming home really drunk, really angry one night. And I was only 6 years old, and I remember my dad just yelling at my mom in the kitchen, and he had a shotgun and had cornered her in there. And I didn't, know any better. I just knew my mom was in a bad place and my dad was just acting crazy, and I grabbed a baseball bat and put myself in between my mom and dad and just begged him to stop. And I remember in that moment my dad's just eyes filled up with tears because this wasn't who he was. Like, he was a really loving father who had just fallen on some really hard times and needed support. He left. I don't know where he went that night. But my mom knew the situation was no longer safe. My dad's addiction had grew to a place where we really needed to leave. Otherwise, the state would get involved
Yeah.
because it's safe. But she was isolated and she was a single mom, and so she had a connection with a local church. She called them and they offered us refuge and they helped us relocate to Southwest Florida. And then they stuck with my dad. He ended up in prison because of that addiction to drugs. And he just got the support he needed. Somebody saw the potential in him. And so they mentored him and supported him. And because of that, when he got out of jail, they helped him find a job. And our family ended up getting back together. My parents were remarried. And we were just so fortunate that the community came alongside us in our greatest time of need. And I can't even imagine, well, I know this, if the state were to intervene and me and my brothers would have gone into foster care, our outcomes would have been just totally different. And I
Totally
know this
different.
because I worked in the foster care system. And, what a lot of people don't understand is you have really good people in the system trying to help children and families. I was one of them. But the system is so overwhelmed, it's broken. You don't always have high quality foster homes. Children get separated from their siblings. I can't even imagine. I was so, I'm so close with my brothers, still am. I can't even imagine being apart from them. Abuse happens in foster homes. The trauma of just being separated from your family,
Yeah.
um, trauma children carry with them their whole lives.
100%
And
impacts
so
all the decisions they make and all of that.
So it's to be able to prevent that and be able to help
Yeah.
prevent a child from experiencing that separation, that trauma, that abuse and neglect, um, is what I think a community really, should rally behind as families.
Yeah.
Families are important. It's such a strong pillar in our communities is that family unit. And so being able to come alongside and support them and deter all the trauma that would happen from being separated and going into foster care. And then the children and families that do need to go into foster care because it is needed.
Yeah.
There's evil in this world and there's children and families that do need to be there. But 60% of the families that end up there is due to neglect, and neglect is preventable. It's a lot of situations related to poverty.
Yeah.
And so those are the areas where we have proven with our model that we can step in and we can connect these families that are going through those difficult times. And with our support in place, we can help keep that family together and out of foster care. And so I got to see that redemptive model played out. But there's so many families that don't have that. So that's what Better Together, I
Yeah.
think the beauty of what we do is we get to find those moms and dads that are in the community. We get referred to them by law enforcement. We do ride-alongs with the local sheriffs, and they're trained on how to refer families to us, to Department of Children and
Right.
Families, school districts, school teachers, social workers, hospital workers. They'll refer these families to us, and then we'll intervene. And 98% of the time, we'll be able to keep this family out of government run institutions.
Yeah. It's a great success rate. So as the organization has evolved, you've evolved as a leader as well. Talk a little bit about sort of from a leadership perspective. What is some leadership advice that you've heard over the years, whether it's from board members or mentors, that has stuck with you that really resonates as good leadership advice?
Yeah, I have just been really blessed. Better Together has just grown and scaled. We've started with just $25,000 of seed money and just in Southwest Florida. Now we're have a budget of 11.9 million, privately funded. We're in most of Florida, 58 counties. And people ask, how do we get there? And it's really been listening. We've just had these incredible people come alongside and support us, business owners, donors, volunteers, local churches, and being able to listen and get their advice and their support just along the way has just been so instrumental to me as a leader.
Yeah.
Um, just grown so much. One of, my mottos has been like fail fast. There's not a fear of failure. We've learned a ton in our failures, but you
Yeah.
gotta you gotta learn in those moments and you gotta do it fast. You don't want to keep doing something if it's not working. One of my mentors who has just been a huge support to me, and he's on my board of directors now, is he's always just reminded me to focus on just 3 things at a time. And that just having that laser focus on the 3 most important things that I need to focus on as a CEO has just been really, impactful for me
Yeah.
because often you wanna innovate and there's so much going on
Sure.
and, but having that focus and being able to prioritize what those 3 things are, I think has really helped us,
Yeah.
to where we need to go, and that's something that all of my leaders on our team, and all of our team members, something that we really helped at, um, just, punch in. I say culture has been really big.
Yeah.
We were always kind of trailblazing and doing our own thing. And so being able to create a really healthy culture, and we're not perfect, just always learning.
Yeah.
Um, but really being hyper focused on how can we, build healthy culture? How can we learn, and take care of your people, your greatest assets on your team?
Yeah, the focus on 3 things is interesting. I heard this thing today actually as we're recording in late January from a leadership somebody went to a leadership development conference at his work, and I think it's been said before, but I heard it in really great context, and it was when you're a CEO and you're making decisions on your time, it has to be a hell yes. If it's just yes, then don't do it. And if it's not sure, don't do it. If it's hell yeah, I'm gonna do that, then you know you put it on your calendar. And it sounds like your 3 things, you stay disciplined to those 3 things as a CEO that help you grow and do what you need to do for better together.
I love the way you just put that. It's funny, we have a in our hiring, we have a heck yeah for,
Really?
people, that's what we wanna aim towards, but I think that's incredibly important, like, you have to be all fired up, you gotta be
Yes.
focused, and if you lose that focus, even your team, like, mission creep, um
100%, especially in a nonprofit that does so much, you have to be wary of that.
Mhm.
What so and as you've grown, you've also, as you said, 58 counties, so that's, basically 90% of Florida. So that's more leaders, more structure, bigger budget, more people. What do you look for in leaders when you're looking to promote somebody or hire somebody? How do you get to that? Hell yeah, that's the person we want. What are you looking for in leadership?
Yeah, so, scaling has been the hardest thing I've ever done. Um, it is I've had some other nonprofit leaders talk to me and wanna just pick my brain on scaling, and, um, if we were just here in Southwest Florida, be mission accomplished. I can't even imagine, you know, just once you start expanding outside of that geographical territory and you have to have those leaders in place, systems become more complicated. Something that worked for you doesn't work anymore. And you get farther removed from your people. And so having really solid leaders in place has been really critical, and just making sure that we're all communicating the same vision, we're all communicating the same really important messaging, having just leaders that are um, we have that culture deck and we really align, like they have to be really well suited within our culture. We look for leaders that are hungry, they're humble, they're smart, they have a big vision, they're willing to roll up their sleeves, they're not managers, they are servant leaders. Has been really important, and I wish I could say I've gotten it right every single time. I haven't. And that's been painful and it's expensive when you
Yeah.
get the wrong people in the wrong seats. So being able to create just really clear accountability, really clear expectations, and then when things aren't going the way they should, or the culture isn't aligning with the company's culture and our expectations, just I say hire slow, fire fast.
Yes.
And that's been just a motto of our team. And it's just important because if you get the wrong people, it can be cancer, it can be incredibly toxic.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's been, I think, one of the hardest things have just been people.
The,
And we've had amazing people come on our team in different roles, but it's just not the right seat. It's not, we say you have to want it, you have to get it, and you have to have the capacity for it.
yeah.
Um, and there's some amazing people that might not have the capacity for it, or it's the work we do is really hard. It's not easy work. It's incredibly hard work. It's emotionally, mentally, can be draining.
100%.
And so being able to find people who feel called to that, are passionate about that. Um, and then there's a lot of self-discipline. And so helping your team be successful by creating like strong boundaries, good
Yeah.
discipline. Um, it's hard. We're in a remote environment. We've always been remote. That was
Yeah.
one of the things joke. I'm like, we were remote before COVID happened.
You were home, work from home before it was cool.
Yeah, but you have to there's a discipline that comes
Sure.
with that. I remind my team, I'm like, we don't really work from home. We work from the community, out in the community,
Sure.
and you have to be really intentional on managing your time. And so some people are better at that and some people struggle with that. And so we've had to create some really good accountability boundaries. Um, and that's been really important to us, is really setting that bar high and holding people to it, but then also towing the line of just being really gracious, supporting.
Yeah.
Um, if people are willing to learn and they want to grow, like we want to make sure that they have those opportunities to grow and
Right.
learn. Um, so yeah, I'd say people is the hardest.
Yeah.
It's your
And
greatest asset as an organization, but it is definitely, I think, one of the hardest things when you're growing and
yeah,
scaling.
scaling right people in the right seats for sure. You talked about failing forward, failing fast. Are there examples that stand out in your mind that you learned, whether it was scaling or some other failing forward or situation that stands out in your mind as a big example of a lesson learned in something not going your way or the organization's way?
Yeah, so I love ideas. I have a lot of them. And sometimes, our team will have different ideas and leaders. And so, we want to test the ideas. But we had this great idea. There's so many. Um, Let me think of a good example. We had an idea just as far as like the structure of how things are going to get set up. And so we just started trying it, and it just, outcomes is really important. So we are looking at that
Sure.
data, measuring that data. And we were convinced like this is a great idea. This is going to streamline our systems. This is going to be helpful. And it wasn't. But we were able to identify that, get feedback from our team, look at the data, and then we were able to quickly pivot, and then go back to what was working really well, or be able to, in this situation, try something different. And so we've had just a lot of really critical moments of doing that, which has been really helpful for us as an organization. And just having that constant
Yeah.
communication, feedback loop with our team. Like, is this working? Is there a
Right.
better way to do it? I always tell my team, like, to always be kind of challenging those norms just because we've been doing it this way for so long. Like, is this the best way to do it? Is there a better way to do it? Um,
Yeah. You have to have a sense of humility too. I think back to the Observer Media Group. Goes back about probably about 10 or 12 years ago. We had gotten a new CMS software provider, and we had all the training, and it was rolled out, and it was a really big deal. And I believe it was from Utah, and these people flew in and gave us training on it, and it just was not compatible with our culture, with our company, with anything else. And credit to our publishers and owners, after a brief period of time of high stress that this wasn't the right fit for us, we pulled the plug, and I believe it was an expense to get out of that contract, but they knew that this was not the right fit for us, and they didn't look backward and say whose fault it is, and they said, "Hey, we're going to get something that's better for us." And it sounds like you guys have had to do that as well, that adjust and be have humility about it.
Yeah. And like you said, like sometimes it's expensive, it's
Yeah,
painful, and but being able to say, hey, we made a mistake. We
yeah,
went into good intentions, but I think if you don't recognize that and you try to push things forward that isn't working, that's where, greater issues
yeah,
come about.
right,
So you have to be able to be agile, you have to be humble, you have to be able to, be innovative
yes,
um and it's great. Like my team too, they'll tell me I have an idea, and they're like, that's a great idea, but we got to finish this idea first. Because I
That-
think that's challenge as a leader too, especially if you are a visionary. I get excited about
right.
different ideas. different things we want to do, but having a good team in place where they can be honest and have good, healthy candor to say, hey, that's a good idea. And we do this for each other, but we need to think about our team. We need to make sure that we have this, done first before we move on to this.
Yeah.
And so having that communication and that pulse check within your team, I think is really important to be able to create that culture.
Yeah. And so your team's comfortable saying, hey, Megan, focus on your three things. We're not
Yeah.
ready for this yet, or this is too much. They're comfortable saying that to you?
Yeah. And it's funny, sometimes I'll just even tell them, like, you can tell me no. You
Yeah.
can, I want you to, remind me on things. I want you to push back. I want you to ask questions.
It's an important thing as leader, be able to say that you don't want yes people, and then utilize it when they say, hey, we're not ready for this yet, or have you thought about this?
Well, and it's funny too. I joke with my team, and we do ideal team player, which is that hungry, humble, smart. And if you're not that ideal team player, sometimes you can tend to go into different categories. And one of them is the accidental mess maker. And my team will tease me because if they don't push back on me or don't know, or I don't have all the information, sometimes I'll kind of accidentally make a mess. So having that communication
Yes.
and them to be like, hey, time out. It's just been really important for us to be able to be effective
Yeah.
and also just knowing each other's personalities. Like, they know I'm a fact finder. I like to have all the facts and information before I make decisions. And then once I make a decision, it's like quick start. It's like,
Let's do it.
let's do it right now. Like, let's not delay. So don't come to me if you have an idea or plan and you have all the information. You also have to have, like, once you get that yes, let's go.
Yeah.
So I think that's been really valuable for our team, is just knowing each other's, especially me, like knowing what's my leadership style, what's the information I need. And then us kind of knowing each other and how we kind of fit in that puzzle, and complement each other because we have different strengths. I have really, really smart people on my team.
Yeah.
And leaning into them on their expertise and being able to hear their ideas, I just think is incredibly important and has helped us grow and expand as quickly as we have.
Excellent. One last question, Megan. As we're, early February here, mid-February, what are some things we could look forward to? One or two big things happening with Better Together the rest of this year?
Yeah, so this is a big year for us. This is actually our 10-year since we started, and
Congratulations. Amazing.
thanks. It's been an incredible journey. So we have in February, we have a gala in Southwest Florida. That's February 20th. This year in April, we have our big nationwide day of second chances. And that's where we partner with churches all across the country to host second chance job fairs on a single day. And we do a bunch of just awareness around second chance hiring, the importance of second chances. And that happens all throughout April. And we're continuing to grow. So our team is growing, we're hiring, and that's been really exciting. And so we're really excited to get these key people on board, joining our team, and just continuing to grow our footprint across Florida and also nationally through our jobs program.
Awesome. Excellent. Megan Rose, was really good to talk to you. Megan Rose with Better Together. Thank you so much for joining us on the From the Corner Office podcast.
Thanks so much, Mark. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Business Observer From the Corner Office podcast. I'm your host, Mark Gordy. This podcast was produced by Reed Corley of the Corley Company in Sarasota. To hear more episodes of From the Corner Office podcast, go to businessobserverfl.com.